You sit down to do something important, something you've been thinking about for a while. You know you should start. You even want to start. And for a moment it feels simple, like you're right there, right at the edge of beginning. But you don't start. And the strange part is, it doesn't feel like laziness. It feels like something else, something quieter, harder to explain. This is what procrastination actually feels like. Not the version people usually talk about, not just discipline, not just motivation, but the exact moment where something inside you subtly pulls you away. And if you don't see it there, you miss what's really happening. Because it doesn't always look like avoidance. Sometimes it looks normal. Sometimes it even feels reasonable. You open what you need. You look at it. You read the first line. You think about where to begin. You can even imagine yourself doing it. You picture the next step. And for a second you're close. Closer than you expected. Then something shifts. You hesitate. Not strongly. Not obviously. Just enough to stop the movement. And suddenly, starting feels heavier than it should. There's a slight resistance now. Not enough to alarm you. Just enough to slow you down. So you wait. You check something small. You adjust something unnecessary. You tell yourself it's just for a second. But that second stretches. And without noticing, you're already further away than before. Far enough that starting again feels harder. Most people think procrastination is about laziness or lack of discipline. But that doesn't explain this moment. Because if it were laziness, you wouldn't even get this close. You wouldn't sit down. You wouldn't feel that internal push. So something else is happening. Something more precise. Something that only appears when you're about to begin. The real shift happens right before you begin. Before that, everything still feels safe. You can think about it, plan it, organize it. You can imagine doing it well. Nothing has been tested yet, but the moment you start, that changes. And that change is what creates the resistance. Because real feels different. Real demands attention. It requires effort. It asks you to stay when the easy part is over. It removes the distance you had while you were just thinking. And that's where something in you reacts. Not to the task itself, but to what comes with it. Uncertainty, pressure, the possibility of getting stuck, the possibility of not doing it well, the possibility of not knowing what comes next, and sometimes the possibility that it actually matters more than you want it to. Because once it matters, you can't stay distant from it anymore. So instead of moving forward, you move slightly away. Not enough to notice. Not enough to call it avoidance. Just enough to feel easier. You delay a little. You reduce the pressure. You make the moment feel manageable again. You keep the idea alive so it still feels like you're going to do it. But you don't move, and nothing breaks. So you don't question it. You just drift. And that's why it repeats. Because it never feels like a clear decision. It feels like something that just happened. You're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding the moment where it becomes real. That exact point where thinking ends and doing begins. That's where procrastination actually lives. And once you see that, the pattern becomes clear. It's not random. It's not just distraction. It happens at the same point, every time, right when you're about to cross from thinking into doing, right when there's no distance left between intention and action. So next time it happens, don't focus only on what you didn't do. Focus on the moment right before you stopped, right before you hesitated. Stay there for just a second longer. Notice what changes. Notice what pulls you away, because that's the only place this pattern actually exists. And it's the only place you can begin to interrupt it. You don't need more discipline. You don't need more motivation. You need to see what's actually happening while it's happening. If this made you stop and recognize something, don't ignore it. Because most people notice this once and then go right back to the same pattern. Subscribe if you want to actually understand what's happening in your own mind. And share this with someone who keeps blaming themselves for being lazy, because it's probably not that. And in the comments, be honest. What do you usually do right before you stop? That moment matters more than you think.